2017 was rough. That was May 23rd, 2017 is when the mob showed up at your door. That whole academic year, 2016 into 2017, and even before that, but especially that year, it was roiling, and it blew up, and it was September before we knew for sure that we were not going to be professors anymore. And it was a full-on reversal of, our entire lives. Reversal is the wrong word, an upending. We went through the looking glass in the language that we started to use. And one of the things that you see after you go through the looking glass is, oh, survived. It's actually interesting over here. There's some interesting people that I couldn't see before. And also, when people make false claims at you, when they yell at you that you're a bigot, and you're not, because you checked with yourself and you're self-aware enough and honest enough with yourself to know, and you have friends and family around you who will tell you if you're wrong, you can say, yeah, nope, not true, right? And it is also extraordinarily obvious that most of the time it's the people claiming bigot who are in fact the bigots, right? And that we know. Most of our audience will already be well familiar with this. But one of, now we will be 6 years out this year. We have now, of course, COVID has happened, and we've had a different kind of run-in with sort of cancellation. This, the demonetization, the shadow banning, and the actual banning of some things like the Unity account, but the demonetization by YouTube. All of these things are kinds of cancellation, but the cancellation by mob using woke language to cow everyone into silence and compliance, I figured we were completely free of. And I, unfortunately, in the last few weeks, came to see the naivete of that position. Because what is true is that if you have connections, if there are other people whom you love in the world who are not free in the same way, who have not been pre-canceled as we have been and are thus immune to that particular thing, then the mob can come for them because of their association with you. And this was attempted, and I'm going to speak in kind of vague terms here. We may speak more in more detailed and precise ways later, but for now, for today, we're gonna keep it vague. But I will say that I found myself in the face of a dear friend of mine being at risk of losing, and I'm going to use that crazy plural pronoun just to obscure this person's sex, at risk of losing their job because they insisted that no, they are actually friends with me, and I'm an evolutionary biologist, and I believe that there are two sexes and only two sexes in humans, and that you can't switch between them. It is my purported transphobia, which A, does not mean what they claim it means, and B, if it means anything at all, it means all sorts of things, because what trans is all sorts of things, right? And as we have said over and over and over again, and as I have written over and over and over again, I know trans people. I understand trans to actually be a condition, a condition of being human for very, very, very rare people who actually feel deeply inside of themselves that in order to live their lives as they need to live them as the sex that they are not. Such people are generally not confused about having actually transitioned sex, and all the rest of it, which is the vast majority of what is passing for trans and trans rights activism and trans activism in general now, is either misogynistic and regressive to gender norms of the 50s. If you like wearing a dress, you must be a woman. No, wrong. But there are, I could riff on all the ways that trans is and is not represented accurately in modern activism now. But the short version here is that someone tried to take my friend out because he is friends with an evolutionary biologist who knows, and I used the word believe before, but who knows that in the human lineage, there are two and only two sexes, and there have been for at least 500 million years and maybe up to 2 billion years. And furthermore, and I wrote about this a little bit in my natural selections piece this last week, in mammals, there are no known cases of functional hermaphrodites or of being able to switch between sexes. And mammals is a really old clade, far older than Chicxulub, 65 million years ago at the Cretaceous-Tertiary boundary, when a giant piece of rock hit the Earth around the Yucatan and wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs. And then you had the rise of the mammals, but mammals existed before then. We've got, mammals are very, very old, and we don't have any evidence anywhere in mammal history ever of mammals being able to actually switch sex. Gender's the software. Gender is the behavioral manifestation. And can you have, men who behave more like typical women and vice versa? Yeah, you can. And that doesn't change what they are fundamentally. So that all is over in some specific territory. The thing that really grabbed me. Okay, go on.
There are a couple things to say. One, mammals did exist before the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs, but they were oppressed by them.
They were. It was the age of dinosaurs. I mean, you've seen how we've named it now. Even mammals named it the age of dinosaurs.
Right. It was the age of dinosaurs, and now we are in the age of mammals because there are only 2 1/3 times as many dinosaur species still on the earth as there are mammals. But never mind that. We are the ones who do the naming, and so
ostriches don't get to name things. So
no, they do not.
No, it's not going to happen anytime soon. Ostriches.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say is, this is actually exactly parallel to my students having known better than to accept the claim that there was some history of racism. The moment those people streamed through the door, my students knew it was bull, right? Mm-hmm. I hear you accused of transphobia, right?
Yeah.
I have seen you take care of trans students. I have seen you fret over the difficulties they run into in the world. And the very idea that what we have is a movement that is actually parasitizing transness, right? This rare but real phenomenon. It is parasitizing that in order to gain access to a protected status that then allows it to do things like, win swimming competitions and things like this.
Well, there's, to use biological framing, there's a mimicry. So parasitizing, yes, for sure, but it's pretending to be the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? And in a non-human setting, at the point that the mimic so vastly outnumbers the model, which is to say the true original thing, the whole system falls apart. Right? Like everyone else who's sort of on the outside observing mimics and models, as it were, can see that it doesn't make any sense and it doesn't work. The signal doesn't work anymore, right?
Right. So
and there are some of us out here saying that's not wrong. But unfortunately, a good half-ish of the country who's thinking about this at all is compelled by these talking points, and all they have to do is go transphobe. And the obvious discrepancies and damage being done, especially to children, by this ideology just disappears because people are scared of being called names. And you were remarkably not scared of being called racist because you had already investigated very carefully and thought and knew, no, not true. I similarly am not scared of being called a transphobe because the word isn't meaningful in the same way that racist at least used to be meaningful, but to the degree that it means in the very narrow sense, no, not true. However, I did find myself wavering in this situation in a way I never did.
Because they took a hostage.
Because they took a hostage.
But
this is a really important point. When they came at you, and then very quickly they came at us, but it was even if I had somehow remained invisible to the mob that came for you, we were in it together. We've been in it together from the beginning. I vetted and edited and okayed everything you sent out to those crazy people in advance, fighting against the ideology, right? Like we were in it together, whether or not they knew that.
Yep.
I assume and hope that you never doubted that I would say, can we just give in? Can we just, right? That was never an option.
Entered my mind.
Never an option for me, and I assumed that you knew that, and you did. But it's not my right to expect someone else whom I love but isn't my life partner to stand strong when they could say, yeah, you know what, I do disagree with her. Yeah, maybe not my friend, right? It would have been easy for this person. And in fact, because they are who they are, it wasn't going to happen.
Yep.
And they didn't want me to do that, and they wanted us to be working together to figure out what to do, with me knowing for sure that wasn't going to happen. But it was harder for me to have the certainty because I felt like something about me has dragged you into this. The mob took a hostage. This makes it so much more challenging, actually.
All right, 2 points. One, I want to make sure to come back to this because this puts the shoe on exactly the other foot for me on an issue where I have been clear and I'm probably in error. So I'd like to come back to that. But I want to talk about the confidence when the mob shows up, right? Where does the confidence that the accusation has no merit and therefore does not require, hand-wringing or, extensive contemplation? Mm-hmm. That comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think it can only be one place, which is that you have already done the contemplation. If you're trying to think this through as the mob is accusing you of things, right? You're not going to...
They can confuse you. They can sway you, perhaps.
And, your instincts as a good person, like, well, wait a second. It's not my right to shut somebody down who thinks I've got a moral defect. It's my obligation to investigate that.
I need to listen to criticism.
That thing will be weaponized against you. And so the point is, look, when those students were accusing me of racism, there is a reason that I had exactly no concern about this. And it's because this has never been a charged issue. It wasn't a charged issue in my family. We talked openly about it. We dealt with the difficulties. And so to whatever extent I might have a misunderstanding, and I'm sure that I do, it wasn't the result of a moral defect. It wasn't the result of me rooting for one group against another. And in fact, I was very clear on, what I did think about this issue, right? What I thought the unfortunate features of the system were, what I thought the places that humanity was lucky, because where race could be a worse issue, the biology that underlies this is much less horrible than it might be. But in any case, it is the navigation in advance, right? That is why you also have no fear on the issue of transphobia. Right? Because you've done this work in advance over the course of years with different real live people. It's not a theoretical question for you. This is the problem, though. What the mob is doing, one of the many things the mob is doing, is it is making it impossible to have a discussion in which you figure out what you think and why. Yeah. Right? It is making it impossible for us to present evidence. It comes up with arbitrary rules, like you're not one of those, so you're not allowed to talk about those.
Right.
And if that's a rule, then the point is, well, how
will I learn? It's not my job to teach you. Well, how about I learn on my own? No, you're not allowed to think about those things because you're not one of those.
Right. Yeah. And, you can't make a joke about this. Okay? I can't make a joke about this because it will make people feel unsafe, and not being safe is bad. And, so, okay, now there's a rule against making a joke. Well, but the problem is jokes, even jokes that go too far, right? Of which there are many, many jokes. Even jokes that go too far help us figure out where too far is and why it's there, right? What makes a joke funny involves figuring out where that line is, right?
Without humor, the line still exists, but no one can point to it.
Right. And the fact is, there are trans people. I gotta say, it's an odd phenomenon, right? It's an interesting phenomenon. It would be shocking if there was nothing funny about it. Right? It would be utterly shocking, right? We can say the same thing about homosexuality. Frankly, we can say the same thing about races and the various arbitrary differences between us, right? These are all grounds for humor, and humor is...
And the differences between men and women.
Of course. Right. All of these things. And so the point is, it's no accident that the point is, you're not one of those, you can't talk about it, and you sure as hell can't make a joke, right? Because if you could make jokes, then you could figure out where you stood and why and then you'd be immune when they came through the door. And so it's all kind of a matter of frustrating any normal process that would protect you, so that you're vulnerable and then can be manipulated to be absorbed into the mob and to go after the next person, which is why this thing is contagious and dangerous, is that it picks people up.
Well, it picks people up whom it has already made as ignorant and confused as possible, so that they are least likely to be able to defend themselves against techniques that are authoritarian and mean and frankly bigoted. And they, part of what they do is they take all of their characters, which include being authoritarian and mean-spirited and bigoted, and they accuse you of being those things. And of course, whenever you deny a thing, it forever after, there is an association with people who maybe don't know you very well. It's like, oh, wasn't she the one who denied the thing? Mm-hmm. Right? But yeah, there is a lot of bigotry in society still. And some of the traditional kinds of bigotry do exist. It was waning fast.
Yeah.
That was waning fast. And what we have now is on the side of the political spectrum that we used to be unabashedly on, without any suggestion that we might maybe not really belong on the left. Like, that's at least how I felt, right? Mm-hmm. For my entire life. It is that side now that is embracing bigotry, that is embracing name-calling and cancellation and threats and authoritarianism, and it's doing so in the name of love. And it's a lie. Like, some of them are confused themselves, and some of them know that they're full of it, but it's wrong regardless of how they get there. And, enough with the fake, love above all stuff from the people who are acting in exactly the opposite way. Like, there are a lot of very loving people out there who don't look like what these mobs want them to look like. And frankly, the feelings of the people and the mobs cannot continue to describe for us what it is that we're allowed to do and say in the world.